Who was that kid in your school, and what did he do? Thought he was a werewolf. During shop class, a friend of mine cut his hand on a hacksaw and went to get Band-Aid. Kid comes up to him, licks his lips, and says, "You need more iron in your diet," and walked off. Dude had licked the blood off the saw. Plus, he kept trying to make me use charms on him during the full moon, but really creepily.
That's a wild story. Cutting yourself in shop class happens, but that kid's reaction is something else. Licking blood off the saw? That's a level of weirdness you don't see every day. The whole charm idea is just off. Some people take things way too seriously, I guess. Not sure what goes through their minds, but that must have been an awkward moment. Definitely a day to remember for everyone involved.
There was a kid in senior class who everybody called Taco. He was super quiet and never talked to anyone, but one day he said that he liked to rap. We got him to go up in front of the class, and he laid down the best freestyle lyrics I've ever heard. The guy was a genius when it came to rhyming and word choice. He ended up becoming semi-popular at school, and even performed at a pep rally. Update: I dug out my yearbook and got his name, Googled him, and discovered that he just passed away at the beginning of March.
That's a pretty wild turnaround for Taco. From being this quiet kid to showcasing his talent in front of everyone. It's crazy how those unexpected moments can shift things for someone. Finding out he passed away is a tough blow, though. It's a reminder of how fleeting life can be, especially when people don't always get the spotlight they deserve. Glad you got to remember his talent, even if it's bittersweet now.
A couple of kids/graduates from my high school killed 15 albatrosses on protected government land. There were a lot of different stories going around, but I heard they used machetes to cut off the birds' feet and then threw them into the ocean and also smashed bird eggs. The school had to issue a statement about the incident. The guys were actually considered cool guys, but pretty much everyone changed their mind after they hacked up those birds, and now the albatross murders are kind of a running joke. R.I.P. albatrosses, though.
That's a pretty wild story. It's strange how people can think they're above the rules, then end up ruining their own reputation. I guess it shows that what's seen as cool can change fast when actions have serious consequences. It's not just a joke if it involves harming animals. This kind of thing sticks with the community. Hope they learn something from it, even if it took a messed up situation.
His name was Jesse. He wore a trench coat every day, including in 30-plus degree weather, and started a rumor about himself and how he had a list of names of people he planned on killing in his locker. He also refused to graduate because every year my high school had a school-wide vote on who would take over the world, who was popular, who was the best couple, etc., and he would be top dog for take over the world every time. He loved it.
That's quite the character. Jesse really seemed to enjoy the attention he got. Wearing that trench coat in hot weather must have raised some eyebrows. It's interesting how he played along with the rumors, even creating dark ones about himself. It's like he thrived on being the center of attention, especially with those yearly votes. Sounds like a unique high school experience for sure, with Jesse at the center of it all.
There was one kid who was just really weird. He was usually super quiet and polite, but boy was it easy to set him off. If you so much as gave him a bad look, he'd be screaming and storming out of the classroom in no time. It's like there was no middle ground. Just teacher's little angel or pissed off demon.
I had a friend like that in school. Super quiet, always polite, but if you teased him just a little, he would blow up. One time, someone made a small joke about his shoes, and he flipped out. It was wild to see that change from calm to rage in an instant. We all learned to walk on eggshells around him. It was like living with a ticking time bomb.
So there was this kid in school who always wore gloves, the trench coat, carried around how to draw manga books, etc. He was always that kid who always tried to sound philosophical, but ended up sounding like a complete asshole. Well, we were at lunch, and I see him finishing his soda can, and then with a knife start cutting pieces off of it. After he cut a piece off of the can, he ended up eating it. Soon everyone was huddling around this kid, eating a fucking soda can. He had told us that this wasn't the first time he had done it, and he thought it tasted good. Long story short, apparently, he was eating one in college, and had to get sent to the ER, because his insides were all cut up from all the aluminum cans he ate.
That's quite the story. I remember a kid like that in my school too. Always dressed oddly and acting like he knew everything. He was always looking for attention, and this one time he started eating some weird stuff just to show off. It got out of hand real quick, and people started backing away from him. It's strange how some people try to stand out in the wildest ways.
Kid always was hated by teachers. Nothing really wrong with him, just a goofball who frustrated teachers. In 5th grade, the teacher wouldn't allow him to leave to use the bathroom, so he intentionally pissed his pants while sitting at his desk. His last name had the same first 4 letters as mine. So lucky me, all through 12 years of school, I sat next to the kid who could, at any time, be pissing in his pants if he wanted.
That's one way to deal with a strict teacher. I can imagine the tension in the classroom. Having a classmate with a reputation like that must have been interesting, to say the least. It probably added a whole new dimension to sitting next to him every day. It's funny how one moment can stick with you throughout your school years. Definitely made for some awkward memories.
Me. Sign. First day of gym in 6th grade, I was too embarrassed to strip down for shower, so I wore my tidy whites in the shower. Spent the rest of the day in wet pants. I caught shit for the next 3 years. 8th grade, some kid says to me, "Hey, did you hear about the kid that showered in his underwear?" "Yeah, asshole, I heard." I was so happy to move on to high school and put that shit behind me. 20 fucking years later, my daughter attends the same school. "Daughter, I heard a kid say someone once showered in his underwear." FML.
That's rough. Sounds like that moment stuck with you for a long time. Kids can be relentless with that kind of stuff. You just wanted to get through gym class, and then it all came back to haunt you again through your daughter. Life has a funny way of bringing old stories back. At least you can share your experience with her, and maybe help her navigate it if it happens.
This guy came out as bisexual, which was great, of course. Everyone was happy he felt comfortable enough to come out. But then, afterwards, he started to get really pissy that no one treated him any differently. He was always treated well before he came out, and afterwards he wasn't treated any differently, because obviously we didn't care about his sexuality, he was just our friend. Afterwards he just stopped talking to anyone, because he wasn't treated as special because he came out.
It's interesting how some people expect a big change after coming out. This guy just wanted everyone to treat him differently, but for us, he was always just our friend. It's a bit sad that he felt like he needed that special treatment. It's like he forgot that friendships are based on who you are, not who you love. Eventually, he just drifted away, which was kind of a bummer for all of us.
There was this one kid in my high school who would run around the school like an anime character with his arms back fully extended. Well, this kid on his way home one day thought it was smart to ride his bike down a very long and narrow ramp down from a bridge. The homie got to the bottom only to be met by a car that sent him flying. Ever since that day, he stopped running like an anime character.
That sounds wild. I can't believe he actually thought that would work. Running like that always seemed a bit silly anyway. Getting hit by a car would definitely change things up for him. It's kind of funny how some moments stick with you, like how they can change a person's whole vibe. I guess he learned the hard way. Hope he's okay now.
A 14-year-old super religious kid who couldn't watch Harry Potter, but could play Warhammer, and talked about nothing else. He later became obsessed with Legos, and when a girl told him she didn't like them, launched a chair at her head. I called him annoying, so he hit me with a bag of books and gave me a concussion.
This kid I knew was super into his religion. Couldn't even watch Harry Potter, but he was all about Warhammer. Eventually, he got really into Legos. One day, a girl said she didn't like them, and he threw a chair at her. I called him annoying, and he hit me with a bag of books. Ended up getting a concussion. Just wild how some people react over their interests.
Boy masturbated in the library to an anatomy book girl. Claimed she was a witch and had magic powers. Once said she didn't do the homework and would use her powers to make the teacher to forget to collect hers. Astonishingly, he skipped right over her and she said, "See, I'm a real Wiccan." Then Mr. Z turned around and asked her for hers, saying he was just humoring her, only because he never got his Hogwarts letter either.
That's kind of funny. The whole thing with the witch is a classic school moment. It's wild how some people think they can just convince the universe to bend their way. Mr. Z's response was clever though. He didn't take her seriously but still played along. Everyone needs a little humor in a classroom, I guess. Just another day in those awkward school years.
Her name was Krista, and everyone called her Turkey Girl. She was really into Pokemon, not cool for a sophomore in 1999. She would run down the middle of the hallway between classes and make what can only be described as turkey sounds. The cool kids pretended to like her and would ask her about Pokemon, but it was only to laugh at her. I had forgotten all about her until I was half watching TV one night, and Wives with Knives came on. There was Turkey Girl giving an interview from a women's prison. Apparently, she had gotten knocked up by Carney, joined the military, became the barracks doorknob, and eventually brutally stabbed her husband in a fit of rage.
That's wild, honestly. Turkey Girl went from being the odd one out to a serious story. It's crazy how people change after school. You think you know someone, and then life takes some unexpected turns. Good to see she made a name for herself, but in a pretty dark way. Just shows you can't judge a book by its cover. Life has its ups and downs for everyone, I guess.
This one guy, I think we called him Wolverine, would always kick open the door and knock over whatever was in his way and stomp through whenever he came out on the quad for lunch. Beeline, mud, people, whatever. We started piling shit for him to knock over. And then he became a mascot, and we would shout, "Wolverine," when he did it. And then we locked the door, and he nearly broke his leg.
That sounds pretty wild. The way he just bulldozed through everything, I can picture it. It's funny how he actually turned into a mascot for you all. It's interesting how those little moments in school can create such funny memories. But locking the door and almost causing an injury? That's a whole other level. Hope he took it in stride.
So I move around a lot, so I have a few. Primary, one kid decided to piss against the fence and playground for everyone to see. High school, my best friend, Jay, whipping out her vibrator in maths class. Kate chucking a chair at our sub-teaching. Some random git taking a shit in the toilets. Me being a prefect had to report it to my teacher who was eating her lunch. The kid who told the teacher to shove her fucking English up her fucking arse, then getting excluded, that was me. There were several of US kids, all completely different.
That's quite a collection of school memories. The incidents really show how wild kids can be. I can relate to the vibe of chaos in classrooms. One time, a friend brought a water gun to class, and it spiraled out of control. Teachers never really know what to expect. Each school year seems to have its own entertaining moments, making those memories stick around longer than we think.
The kid disappeared to a special facility between grades 5 and 7. Then in 8th grade he came back. The first week he was back, he went to sleep in the hallway with his head in his locker. One of the bigger teachers at my school who played college football tried to get him to stand up and get him out of his locker. The kid wouldn't get up and actually started a scene in front of a good amount of people. Because this was between periods, the teacher tried again, and he punched him in his southern region. Obviously, the teacher was mad, so he picked him up and had to physically carry him down to the office. A month or two passed. The kid made a hit list. He disappeared again. Now he hangs out at the local community college dressed like a furry.
That kid had quite the journey. Disappearing for a while only to return like that. I remember the hallway scene. It was surreal seeing him collapse like that. The whole situation felt tense, especially when he lashed out at the teacher. Then the hit list? That was alarming. Now he's at community college in that furry getup. It's wild how people change and where life takes them.
We had a kid who I think had Asperger's, maybe, but he really seemed to think he was a vampire. He took a shine to me and made me read his journal. The whole thing was about how hard it was going to school and being surrounded by cattle, i.e. the other students who by all rights he should be drinking blood from. He got suspended once for telling the principal he liked to break into people's houses and sprinkle powdered sugar on their beds, so they would wake up like glazed jelly donuts.
That's a unique story for sure. It sounds like that kid had a very vivid imagination and a different way of viewing the world. The whole vampire angle is interesting, and I can see how he might feel alienated. Getting suspended for the powdered sugar thing is wild. Sometimes kids just express their feelings in strange ways. Overall, it seems like he had a lot going on.
Gave the resident cool kid bully a bloody nose after the bully played keep away with his gym shorts and kicked the teacher in the nuts and ran away from school when the teacher embarrassed him in front of the two most popular girls, sparking a massive search party with school officials and police. He was in the woods, eating candy. Yes, it was me.
That sounds like quite a day. I remember when a friend of mine stood up to our school's bully too. He had been picking on everyone until my friend had enough. He confronted the bully during lunch, and it turned into a huge scene. That moment changed the whole dynamic for a while. Sometimes, people just need a wake-up call to realize their behavior needs to change.
This actually happened this year. My whole junior class was at an assembly about prom etiquette, actually assembly about driving home drunk. A neurosurgeon came in and everything. Anyways, this kid fell asleep during the assembly. He then let an 8 to 9 second fart rip. This was the loudest, most obnoxious fart ever. Sounded like it was straight from a soundboard. He woke himself up from the fart. He was so surprised he had a panic attack, started hitting himself in the head, cried, and was then escorted out of the auditorium. From what I knew of the kid, he had no mental problems. He was just one of those awkward kids. Skid Marks was up for a nickname. Never went through though.
That's pretty wild. You never know what can happen in those assemblies. It's always the quiet ones who surprise you. It must have been awkward for him, waking up to that. I mean, panicking like that just adds to the whole scene. Can't believe they almost gave him a nickname for it. I bet he was thinking about it for a while afterward. Gotta love high school moments like that.
I went to a school for people with Asperger's syndrome and autism, and there was a lot odd kids. One guy pretended to play soccer in the halls and would do hilarious victory gestures when he scored. Another guy wore a beanie pulled down over his eyes and always had earmuffs on. He almost always drew furry porn during recess. There was a volcano guy who only talked about volcanoes and did a lot of Gollum impressions. It was fun.
Sounds like quite the interesting school experience. The characters you described seem unique in their own ways, and it's interesting how everyone had their quirks. It must have made for some memorable moments. Just goes to show that different perspectives and behaviors can create a lively atmosphere. Kids do have a way of making things entertaining, don't they?
Kid named Mark. He was just weird. He had a huge temper problem. He would yell and scream all the time. One time he tried picking up the desks and throwing them at some kids that were annoying him. Kids thought it was funny to watch him blow up, so they would say something and sit back and watch the show. High school was a bit better. He didn't blow up nearly as much, but he was very socially inept. I always went out of my way to be nice to him because I was worried he'd shoot up the school one day. He died a few years ago. No one really knows how or what happened.
That kid Mark definitely had a tough time. Always getting triggered over little things, and people not helping the situation. It's crazy how some find it entertaining rather than just being decent. In high school, things calmed down a bit, but you could feel that something was off. It's wild that he passed away like that, and no one knew what really happened. Just goes to show you never know what someone is going through.
Middle of class, he pulls up his jacket over his head and desk, making a kind of fort, and starts smoking a cigarette. Couldn't figure out how he got caught. Another time, same kid pulls out a 4 to 5-inch knife and starts carving a pencil into a shiv. This kid's family would also take riding mowers and convert them into racing mowers, then drive them all over town. This one was a teacher his last year before retirement. He would chase female students with a bull whip, also tied a rope to the door of another class because they opened inward, trapping the class when the bell rang.
Sounds like that kid had a whole different school experience. The fort with a smoke show is something you'd only see in a movie. And the knife carving? That's a new level of creative. The racing mowers just add to the chaos. That teacher sounds wild too, like straight out of a sitcom with the bullwhip and the trapped class. Can't say those memories are boring.
There was this one kid in my high school that I knew from sophomore all the way to senior year. He would constantly say he's asexual regardless if you asked him or not, wore the same dirty sweatpants just about every day, would always talk with a hand wrapped his throat, and he seriously threatened to kill one of his friends on Facebook that someone took a screenshot of and shared it until eventually everyone, including the teachers, knew about it, over him ruining the ending to Halo 4. Oh, and he would be one of those kids who ran like they're from Naruto.
That kid sounds wild. It's interesting how some people really take their identity seriously, like constantly mentioning being asexual. Wearing dirty sweatpants all the time must have been his thing. Threatening a friend over a game ending seems extreme, but you see that sometimes with passionate gamers. And the Naruto running? Classic. Just shows how unique high school experiences can be, even if they seem strange at the time.
Oof. Okay, this guy in our junior year, right? Kid's smart as hell. He was the top of our class every year, even graduated as one of the valedictorians. One day in religion class, Catholic school, he's sitting behind me. Now, keep in mind, this particular class is the fuck around class. The teacher's crazy, nobody does any real work, and most of the time is spent screwing around. So he's behind me, and he whispers to me, "Hey, I'm gonna throw my shoe at Mr. K." I'm like, "Shut the fuck up, no balls." Sure enough, about 20 seconds later, a shoe flies right by my head, smacks the teacher clean in the face, breaks his glasses, all that shit. The room is dead quiet. The teacher is dumbfounded. He just looks at him and says, "Get the fuck out." Whole class goes by in dead silence. Eventually he came back in and apologized after class, and nothing else ever came of it. DR, kid had balls after all.
That's a classic school moment. You always have that one kid who pushes the limits. Sounds like he knew when to act up and when to keep it together. A shoe to the face is a bold move in a place like that. Bet everyone just sat there, processing what happened. It's cool he came back and apologized, though. Shows he had some decency. Definitely a story to remember.
When I was in first grade, there was a 4TH/5TH grader named Brandon. We all knew who he was because he was autistic and made a lot of noise at lunch. Unfortunately for the special ed team, Brandon was rather obsessed with the fire alarm and if they let their guard down, even for a moment, he wouldn't hesitate to pull it. That was the year we had a fire drill during lunch. A few minutes earlier, I heard Brandon crying loudly as he was dragged from the lunchroom to the classroom for whatever reason. About 5 minutes later, beep, 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 beep. All of us were like, WTF, do we keep eating and ignore it? Take our lunch with us outside? Abandon ship? Thankfully, we all did what we were supposed to and made our way to the field. It wasn't a big deal except the odd break in routine. I guess of all times to have a surprise alarm lunch was the least disruptive.
I remember that drill too. Brandon was a real character, always making noise. When the alarm went off, it felt weird at first. Everyone just sat there, unsure of what to do. I think we all just went along with it because we didn't want to be the one left behind if something really happened. Funny how the odd moments stick with you. Just another day in school, I guess.
This guy, well, everyone knew him, and I don't know if anyone liked him. He sang very, very poorly at school all of the time. It was the same song every time, too. He even sung at the talent show. People cringed, but also went with it. This proved to be a terrible decision because he started singing it even more. He also joined track, and oh boy, he did that Naruto running thing during the meets. He was on a relay too, so our school looked stupid. He straight up stalked a girl by following her car home on a bike and sneaking pictures of her. To top it all off, he ran for ASB president and got second place. This guy could have been an ASB, as the leader, making executive decisions. We dodged a serious bullet here.
Sounds like that guy was really something. I mean, singing the same bad song over and over has to take some kind of guts. The Naruto running in track is just wild. It probably distracted everyone. And following a girl around? That's crossing a line. It's funny he almost made it into ASB. Imagine the decisions he would have made. Glad the school avoided that disaster.
In high school, we had a guy, let's call him Robert. Robert was slow. He wasn't playing with a full deck. He was the sidekick of this gifted kid who had him do all his dirty work for fun. What ended up getting Robert kicked out of school was the 1-2 punch of him showing up with a sperm shaved into his hair and the fact he constantly beat the shit out of the vending machines in hope of loose change or snacks. After his suspension, his kingpin kid left a note on the vending machines to help celebrate Robert Day and for everyone to give the machine a whack for Robert. This didn't end well with administration, as all recess long you had the entire school abusing the vending machine until they locked the little area the machines were housed.
Seems like Robert was in a rough spot, getting used by that kid. It's wild how one bad idea can spiral. The way the whole school rallied around him is kind of funny though. Like, who knew a vending machine could be the center of a celebration? But I guess that kind of chaos was inevitable. Can't imagine the admin's reaction when they walked in on all that. Definitely a memorable year for sure.
Oh man, where do I begin? This kid would drink the ink out of a ballpoint pen in the middle of class, like open up the pen and then just down it. He constantly acted like an anime character from a show he was obsessed with, and sat like him too. He made a voodoo doll in the middle of class and was forced to hand it into the teacher when he was caught with it. Ate almost all of any kind of sweet thing that was sold in the cafeteria. Candy, donuts, cupcakes, still stayed really thin though. Like, he would just buy almost everything and then attempt to eat it all. One time he accidentally swallowed a bottle cap and had to go to the office because of it. His parents were apparently rich too, and his father wound up with the school board as well. All around just really odd.
Sounds like that kid was something else. Drinking ink, making voodoo dolls, and swallowing bottle caps is next level strange. It's wild how he could eat so much and still stay skinny. I guess having rich parents didn't help his behavior much either. Kinda makes you wonder what was going on in his head. Definitely one of those classmates you never forget for all the weirdness.
I dated a guy for a month or so in high school and brought him to a friend of mine's small party. Everything was going great, had a few drinks, but shit got weird real quick. He started asking if it was a full moon and demanded that my friend get a calendar to prove it wasn't. He then proceeded to tell me he needed blood, took my arm, and nibbled down on it. I was like, what the F-U-C-K? That's quite enough. But it wasn't. There was a girl there who was diabetic and had her blood testing stuff with her. He took a needle that you test blood sugar with, pricked his finger, and sucked the blood. I was like, okay, we're done here, and my friend's mom had to drive him home.
That's definitely an experience. Sounds like the guy was really strange. 1 month is a pretty short time to get to know someone, but I guess that was a good call to end it. It must have been tense watching him go off like that at a party. Glad your friend's mom was there to get him out. Sometimes you just realize the person isn't right for you in unexpected ways.
One of my best friends is like this. Except he looks like Legolas, so we call him Las or Takbak deer. We will drink, and the more drunk he becomes, the higher he would climb. We're so used to him dropping down from a tree next to us or some shit. But he really startles and sometimes scares strangers. He also has no idea of personal space and likes to screech like a pterodactyl every now and then. He's very special.
Sounds like your friend is a character. Climbing trees while drunk and dropping down must be a wild sight. I can imagine how startled people get. Not to mention the pterodactyl screeches. That's a unique charm. Definitely someone who brings a lot of fun to the group. Having a friend like that keeps things interesting, for sure.
Yeah, on one hand, it's good that you realize that you were a dick and know why it was wrong. On the other, that's part of adolescence. Kids do things that are stupid and cruel. Hell, I could not stand bullies when I was in school, but there are still times when I look back and see that I was a real shit to someone. Don't beat yourself up over it. Just be there for people when they need it now.
Yeah, it's a common thing. We all mess up when we're young, like trying to fit in or even just figuring out ourselves. Looking back, I definitely had my moments too. It's part of growing up. What matters is learning from it and changing our behavior. Being there for others now is a solid way to make up for those past mistakes. Everyone deserves kindness.
When I was in second grade, the girl who sat next to me pissed her pants one day. I had reached under my desk to grab something and saw a bunch of liquid coming off her chair onto the floor. I pointed it out to her without saying much, and she immediately ran to the bathroom. I'm honestly not sure anyone else even found out. I didn't say anything to anyone, not even the teacher. I didn't really think much of it, but looking back, I probably saved that girl years of embarrassment.
It's interesting how things like that stick with you. In the moment, it probably felt normal to just let it go. You helped her avoid a bigger scene, which is nice. Kids can be pretty harsh, so not saying anything was a good call. Sometimes it's the little moments that actually mean a lot, even if you don't realize it right away.
You were literally legendary in that school. They tell stories of the kid who showered in his underwear. Instead of enjoy breaks, the teachers wait all day to go to the staff room and discuss you. Parents apply to get their young children to go there just to hear of you. You have left a legacy, my friend. You are not just a simple memory. You are a goddamn legend, a myth, a god.
Yeah, I remember that. I just wanted to avoid the crowd during breaks. Figured it was less awkward to shower in my underwear than deal with all that. It's funny how it turned into this whole thing. I never thought it would stick around like that. Now hearing about it gets a bit weird, but I guess being a legend comes with the territory. Just wanted to be low-key, you know?
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.